Welcome to Profit and Prosper, a podcast that will empower you to become financially independent as an entrepreneur. I'm your host, Sarah Young, an entrepreneur, wealth coach, and mentor to driven, ambitious female business owners who are ready to take action towards having a richer and more impactful life. I'm here to push you to think bigger about what's possible for your business and life, and I believe that your business is the best way to have more time and financial freedom. Just 10 years ago, I was $55,000 in debt and leaving a traumatic marriage as a 20-something. Fast forward to today, I now run a 7-figure agency with a team of 10 and growing and have built over $1 million in net worth while balancing taking care of my health and prioritizing being a wife and mom. In this podcast, I will teach you how to scale your business, take home a 6-figure paycheck, and save and invest for your financial future without having to sacrifice your life today. Welcome back to the Profit and Prosper podcast. We are on episode number 97, and this week I'm going to continue talking about how to create a financially sustainable business, specifically talking about how to create a business that you can sustain from an energetic standpoint and from a mindset standpoint. In last week's episode, we talked about the tactical stuff. And so you might have heard me mentioned, if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend starting there because I laid a lot of groundwork for this episode. You heard me mention that I have seen a trend lately. I feel like I've just seen an increase in the number of people who want to burn their business to the ground, walk away and sell it, shut it down, scale back, whatever. And I think that I'm seeing things come down to two things. One was financial sustainability, just not having the consistent cash flow that they need. And I think a lot of that can be driven by both the tactical stuff we talked about last week, of course, the mindset stuff, but I would say a lot of those people who are struggling from a cash flow perspective, a lot of times aren't doing the things that I laid out in last week's episode, where we need to make sure that you are consistently generating leads, selling leads, delivering great client results, and then having a really solid and profitable financial system in place. But the other thing that I've seen a lot of is just people getting burned out. You cannot run at 110% for months and years in your business and expect to operate at your best, expect to have great mental health, and expect to have great physical health and great relationships. Like, it just really is not possible. I think, in short spurts, absolutely, you can really put a lot of energy into your business, but it is just not sustainable to expect to work that way forever and ever. So that's what we're going to focus on this week is 3 things that you need to consider as you think about creating a business that is energetically sustainable. Before we dive into that, 2 quick reminders again. First, if you want a chance to win a $2,000 scholarship to one of my group programs, or if you would prefer a one-on-one session with me, make sure you enter the 100 reviews by the 100th episode giveaway that I'm running right now. So the 100th episode of the podcast is going to come out in just a few weeks on February 15th. My goal is to get at least 100 total reviews between Apple and Spotify by the time the 100th episode comes out. So I will be checking it on the day that episode comes out. I'm going to check in and say, if we have 100 episodes, I will randomly select 2 people who submitted reviews on our form at sarahhyoung.com/reviews. I will randomly select 2 to give away a $2,000 scholarship to one of my programs and a one-on-one with me. Okay, so don't forget to go do that if you haven't done it already, and share it with a friend and encourage them to review and enter so that we can hit that 100 review threshold. Second, for the month of January, so just for a few more days, or I guess maybe another week at this point, I have a bonus. If you enroll in Scaling Made Simple, I have a bonus one-on-one strategy session with me where we are going to sit down and map out your plan for 2024, how you're going to scale your business, identify the points, the things that you need to really focus on first. And then that will kick you off your 6 months inside SMS. So you get the coaching calls as you, weekly coaching calls with me as you implement what we planned out, community support, and then all of the resources and courses and everything else inside. So definitely go apply to that. It's a great time to join if you've been thinking about wanting to scale or grow your business to increase your paycheck in 2024, it's a great time to do that. So go to apply at sarahhyoung.com/scale. All right, so on to the topic at hand, which is creating an energetically, I can't say that word, y'all, energetically sustainable business. I want to ask you this. Do you focus more on the tactics, the strategy stuff, like the stuff we talked about last week, or do you focus a lot more on mindset and energy work? I feel like people tend to lean more heavily in one direction or the other. And the reality is that we need both. If you've ever heard of this idea of masculine and feminine energy in business, I think a lot of the coaches over the last several years, especially on Instagram, a lot of the business coaches very heavily promote like the energy, like be in my energy, right? Learn the energetics, learn the mindset stuff. Like that is definitely the more like feminine, sort of lean back, creative type of energy, which absolutely has a place in business. But there's also some people, I'd say probably fewer people that I see, at least in the, from female coaches. I think there's a handful who maybe I see focus heavily on tactics. And that the tactics, I would say, are more of the masculine energy. So the masculine energy of like, let's go get it done. Let's go pursue our goals. Let's be very driven and motivated. And it's that like forward progress energy. But you need both. You need both of those energies in your business on a more balanced basis in order to move things forward, because doing the mindset work without the tactics is going to get you nowhere. But doing the tactics without addressing your mindset is also going to get you nowhere. Okay, so we need to say both. We need to do both. Your goal should be, I think, to stay steady, have your energy stay pretty steady, even when things get tough in your business, even if things feel like they are going off of the rails. I'm going to give you an example of when I saw this recently not happen. This is one of my clients. So this was a few weeks ago. One of my clients, we had a one-on-one. This is a CFO client at Young & Co. And so I don't do coaching for the CFO clients. At least I try to sort of maintain that boundary. Of course, sometimes if I see things, I bring it up and say like, you need to probably spend some time on this. This was a CFO call. And this person had just like several things happen back to back in their business with clients and teams. And she kind of had just had enough, right? She had enough. She had it up to here and she was having a panic moment. She saw someone else that she knew who, had to scale back on their business, who was having cash flow issues. She was worried that she was going to end up in the same position as them. And then I think just all of it combined led into this space of being like panicked, right? And what I said at the time is like, hey, you're in this space, right? You're in an elevated state of feeling stress, of feeling fear, which is, I'm not saying it's invalid because there's a lot going on, but you as the business owner are the leader of your team, of your clients, of your community, whether you realize it or not. And so when you think about like maybe your past jobs, your bosses, or maybe the manager of your team, maybe the CEO of the company you worked at, think about whether whether you perceive them to be a good or bad leader. How was their energy? If they were a poor leader, my guess is that they allowed their nervous system states and their energy states to swing from high to low, and they were all over the place. I would say the people who I've worked for who have been good leaders tend to be the ones who are steady, who it's like they're the rock in the storm, right? Like it's hard to get them really upset about things. This is why we need to work on this, is because I think when you show up as a leader, whether it's for clients, whether it's to your team, whether it's on sales calls, on social media, wherever, if you have that frantic, panicked, scared, stressed out energy, whether you realize it or not, that shows to other people. And that's probably not the vibe that you want people to have from you, okay? And so our goal needs to be, even when things get tough, can you stay steady? Instead of having these huge peaks and valleys of your energy and of your nervous system state, can we learn to get to a place where we feel more moderate? And I want to remind you, this is a choice, okay? I've worked with people, I've known people, I have people in my family who I think that they believe that that reaction, that state that they're in, the highs and lows, are not a choice that they can make. They don't understand that it's something that they can change. Yes, it takes work to change it, but it is absolutely something that can be changed. And so understand that it is a choice that you're making to allow yourself to continue to be controlled by the roller coaster of emotions, right? Business is a roller coaster. Things are going to happen. So you can choose to either be in control of this situation, in control of yourself and your reaction and your actions that you take from there, or not. Or you can let the other things control you. It is your choice. How can you do things like stick with your plans, stick with the strategies that you have, and keep showing up, even if it seems like they're not working, even if money is tight? How can you increase your capacity to do the scary things, to handle bigger dollar amounts hitting your bank account? I mean, if you close your eyes, let's say you say, I want to hit 100K months, and you close your eyes and visualize $100,000 landing in your bank account all in one time. What is your reaction to that? If your reaction is in any way to seize up, to close off, to feel fear, you do not have the capacity for those bigger dollar amounts yet. How can you increase your, nervous system capacity and your mindset to be able to handle, and your energy to be able to handle the ebbs and flows of business, so that when you leave your desk, you can leave it there. You're not sitting there all night long stressing about clients or work or sales or money or whatever. You can be present and enjoy your life. So I think there's three main things that I have personally done to get there. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this, but I will tell you, I've done a lot of this work over the last 5+ years of being in business. And really, honestly, even before that, I started learning about mindset, meditation. I've done yoga since 2009, less so after I had a kid, but I still love to go to yoga class. And I'm not saying you have to go to yoga, but just that practice of the stillness of in yoga, intentionally doing things that cause your nervous system sometimes to freak out, like doing poses, stretching yourself, helps you to train for the other situations in your life. It's the same as any other workout, right? So if our goal is to reduce the extremes of the highs and the lows, I think there's 3 things that we need to do. Number 1 is time management. Number 2 is mindset work. And number 3 is nervous system work. When it comes to time management, I'm actually going to do an episode next week. I'm going to do an interview with my current business coach, Kelsey. We're going to talk about time management because just a few weeks ago, I was like, I have had enough of my calendar. And so I redid it. I put together a new schedule. I sent it to her and she poked holes in it. And I just want to talk. We're going to have a really good interview about how to manage your time in your calendar, because your time management is crucial for your energy management, right? If you're working 30, 40, 50 plus hours a week in your business and you're not growing, you're not scaling, you're not hitting your goals, you are spending time on the wrong things. With the business I have, Young & Co now does over 7 figures. We do 80 to 100 and some K months in terms of cash coming in, which is crazy that I'm doing that now. And yes, it was driven by acquisition, but we're still there, right? I have coaching stuff too going on. I would say with all of that combined, I'm not working more than 30 to 35 hours a week to do all of that, okay? And so the idea that working more means more money is not correct. And so we need to think about your time management and what you're doing and understand that for you to show up as your best self, you have to have recovery time. You cannot spend 7 days a week thinking about work, having client calls, opening up your laptop, trying to create new strategies, doing all the things, and expect that you're going to be your best self when you show up, when it really matters, okay? You need to understand that your biggest asset you have is you and your brain and your energy. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about time management because we will have the episode coming out next week. I've also talked about it before. Go listen to episode 94. I talked about cutting out unnecessary tasks. And then you can also go back to episode 41, where I interviewed Tanessa Shears, who is a health coach and kind of biohacker for entrepreneurs. And she talked about the impact of taking care of yourself personally on your business. So go check those out for more on this concept of managing your time and taking care of yourself and recovering more. So number two, the second thing you need to have in order to create an energetically sustainable business is the mindset work. You may or may not already do mindset work. Like I said before, I find people tend to fall into one camp or the other. They tend to focus more on strategy, tactics, or on mindset work. Me coming from a corporate background, I mean, obviously the mindset work wasn't even a thing, right? And so it was the very like masculine, let's grind it out, let's do the things, let's have the plans and all that stuff. And so this is all stuff that I've learned over the last, few years that I've been purposefully studying it once I realized that I needed it. But the mindset work is really understanding that the thoughts that you have in your head are really to an extent a choice that you're making. And it took me a while to understand that this was I can't remember where I learned this. I think I was reading a meditation book. I think it was in the book by Dan Harris, 10% Happier. He talks about the monkey mind. And if you've never read that book, I would definitely go read it. I don't meditate. Meditation doesn't always help me as much as it helps him. I think some people love it more than others, but I like yoga better than meditation. Anyways, in there, he talks about this idea of the monkey mind. And when you do these things that allow you to sort of become still, it's the craziest thing, but you almost can become aware of your mind. You can become a neutral, like third party observer to your mind. And so doing the mindset work really helps you understand that like you as a being can be separate from what is going on by default in your mind. And with practice, you can change the things that go on in your mind. It's like I said, people who don't realize this don't understand that the thoughts that they have are really a choice. The way that they show up in the world is a choice that they have. It's not things happening to them. It's their choice about the way that they respond, right? And so to do the mindset work, I've done episodes on this before. I think if you go back to episode 80, I talked about how to change your mindset. And so I won't dive into that again here. But what you need to start doing is understanding what are the most frequent thoughts that you have. What are the underlying like currents to everything that happens? And so when I work on this with clients, I usually like to ask them to think about a recent event that triggered them. Like whatever we're talking through in coaching, I say like, what was an event that triggered you? And I want to understand what happened in that event. What was a thought that you had? What was the feeling that you had about that event? Let's say the thought was, I had a client who like one of the clients from the business we acquired, reached out and was unhappy about our bill was higher than normal. And that immediate thought in my mind was, oh, she's going to leave, right? And then the feeling is stress that you might have when that situation happens. But when we dig into the thought, like my question is, what do you make that mean about you? And so in this case, the thought is, oh, the client's going to leave. What do I make that mean about me? Is I'm going to fail. That's always what all of my thoughts go back to. I've had clients, who their thoughts always go back to, I'm not doing enough, or no one's going to love me, right? It tends to always, like the thoughts that you have tend to go back to that deeper underlying like root thought that you may not even be aware of. And so you have to, with the mindset work, it's really just about understanding the things that trigger you and recognizing when that's happening so that you can address it instead of letting yourself like be stuck in that same loop. Okay. And so when you recognize it, when you see that it's happening, you can begin to reframe the thought and begin to change it into something that is more positive and serves you more. So we have to implement this practice. I've said this about a bajillion times on here, I think, but I will write this down like every day in my notebook. If I feel triggered, I write down what's happening so that I continue to practice and recognize it and so that I can fix it, okay, instead of being controlled by that. So the second thing is we need to practice that mindset work. So if there's one thing you take away, I think it would be to begin to practice that, beginning to recognize events that trigger you and like dig into those thoughts. The third thing that we need to think about to create an energetically sustainable business is your nervous system. Nervous system stuff is so fascinating to me, and it's something that I got more into about a year ago in terms of like learning, reading, doing programs around it. And it's something that I want to continue learning about because I just think it's so, so fascinating. And it's not something that enough people really talk about. So your nervous system is really underneath everything, right? It is your body's way of processing what's happening, trying to keep you safe. It'll, cause when things happen in your environment, your body may perceive them as a threat. Like going back to my example of an unhappy client, maybe my body might see that as a threat, right? It sees that as the lion coming to eat me, even though it's really not. And it will cause, literal chemical reactions throughout your body to keep you safe. It's the fight or flight or freeze or fawn response. If there's one thing that I want to talk about when it comes to nervous system work is that you have to feel the feelings. And you might be thinking, well, if I feel the feelings, but the goal is to get out of these highs or lows of emotions, how does that help me? Doesn't it keep me in a low or doesn't it keep me in a high stressed out state? Your feelings are there to be felt. When you get into stress, a stressed out mode, you can't just put the lid on it and push it back down. It's still there. The feeling, the fear is still there underneath, even if you think that you have ignored it and you've pushed past it. I am terrible at feeling feelings. I'm going to tell you. I do not love feeling negative feelings. Who does, really? But you cannot push away the fear, the stress, the anger. You need to feel it and process it. Because if it's unprocessed, you're going to leave all of that energy there inside of your body and it's going to come out at a later time. It's going to come out more, bigger. You're going to have a bigger, more negative reaction than you would have had you just processed the feeling in the first place. I always recommend that people read the book Burnout. I can't remember the author's name. I think it's Emily Nagasaki, potentially. Don't quote me on that. We'll put the link in the show notes. But in that book, I read this a couple years ago. It was the first place I ever really realized that you have to do what they call completing the cycle. So when you have that feeling of stress in your body, you have to get the energy out. And so that's something that I do if I find myself really heavily triggered during the day to help get myself back to a baseline state is to get the energy out of my body. And so if I'm feeling like a lot of anxious energy, a lot of scared or angry energy, I will literally, stand up and shake my arms. I will sort of run in place. I'll go outside and take like a walk, but try to do it in sort of like a fast walk to get the energy out. Exercise is really great, but it's really to move the energy out of my body and then come back and be refreshed. Other times I go beyond, just feeling angry and I feel like I'm so triggered that I'm into like a shutdown mode. This is like the freeze response, right? And so we're totally shut down. It's like your body is just incapable of doing anything. You don't have any energy anymore. And so in that case, it's not about getting energy out because you don't have any, right? It's about bringing some like gentle energy back in to again get yourself back up to that baseline. If there's one thing to take away, it's that you have to feel the feelings, you have to process the feelings in order to move on quickly. So if you want to build a business, if you want to show up as a CEO of an energetically sustainable business, you have to implement these things to get yourself back up to that baseline and to avoid the huge highs and lows of energy spikes. Because I've seen it happen time and time again where people don't do these things. And then after years of running a business, of dealing with this, they finally say, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I'm burned out. It's not worth it. I'm going to shut it all down. I'm going to burn it to the ground. I'm going to walk away. That's not the best thing to do. That's not the best way to exit your business. If you're going to exit your business, I want it to be intentional. I want it to be a wealth creation activity for you. I don't want it to be you just shut it down and walk away if we can avoid it. So I gave you a lot of thoughts and resources in this episode. Between last episode and this episode, I think these are the things that are just crucial to building a sustainable business in 2024. Even if you're growing, I started the year with the episode on 10xing your business. Even if it is your goal to scale, to do more, even if it's, just 10xing your profits, not necessarily 10xing your income, you have to make sure that you do it in a sustainable way. Because doing it in an unsustainable way, trying to take the shortcuts, trying to skip past the things I'm talking about in this episode is going to come back and bite you eventually. All right. So we're going to do it in a way that is sustainable so we can be here in the long run. So we have the energy to run our businesses, hang out with our families, do things outside of work, to take care of ourselves, and also make really great money all at the same time. If you listen to the last 2 episodes and you're thinking, this all sounds great and I don't know where to start, then I want you to apply for Scaling Made Simple, okay? Because in there, we are going to figure out exactly where you need to work in your business, exactly the things you need to focus on, whether it's the tactical side, which piece of the tactical pieces do you need to have in place, or if it's the mindset stuff, like I will coach you through that and help you identify where do you have energy leaks, where do you have time leaks, where can you improve your mindset, like how can you get yourself up to this place where your business is growing and is sustainable. So that is exactly what we do in Scaling Made Simple. So go and apply at sarahhyoung.com/scale. Don't forget, if you get in before the end of January, the pay in full bonus is the additional one-on-one with me. So we can one-on-one map everything out for you. All right. Final reminder about the reviews. The review giveaway, make sure if you have not left a review yet, go leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Take a screenshot and then go fill out the form at sarahhyoung.com/reviews so you can be entered to win the giveaway. So that was it for this episode on creating a sustainable business. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you some thoughts about what you need to really focus on more to build a more sustainable business. And I'll see you back next week for really a continuation of the conversation talking about time management. I'll see you then. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Listening and learning is great, but implementing what you learned is even better. So what's one thing you can do this week to make more money in your business, save for your financial future, and start living your most prosperous life? If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and share with a friend because it helps me reach more amazing female entrepreneurs like yourself. See you in next week's episode.